When we speak of quantum manifestation, we are not referring to magic, superstition, or some modern spiritual gimmick dressed up in scientific language. We are rather pointing toward a psychological truth that has echoed through centuries of mystical, philosophical, and now even quantum scientific thought. The idea that the mind is not separate from the reality it perceives. The reality we see is, in part, a mirror of the consciousness we bring to it. At its most essential, quantum manifestation is the art of deliberate observation. That may sound trivial, but consider this. In quantum mechanics, particles exist in a state of potential, what physicists call a superposition, until they are observed. Only when measured does a particle choose a definite state. It is as if the universe waits for the gaze of consciousness to decide what form it will take. Now we may debate the metaphysics of that endlessly, but the principle is clear. Attention has agency. Focus determines form. Psychologically speaking, this aligns closely with what Jung described in his exploration of archetypes and synchronicity, that there exists a kind of a causal, connecting principle between the internal psychic state and external events. In simpler terms, your inner world is not disconnected from the outer world. The way you attend to reality, the expectations you carry, the meaning you project, these things shape your experience in ways far more direct than we have been culturally trained to believe. And this is where the simplicity lies. Manifestation is not about acquiring anything external. It is about tuning the inner world so precisely that the outer world begins to reflect it back. Thought, when emotionally charged and consistently held, becomes a kind of organizing force, a filter through which all potential outcomes are sifted, leading eventually to one that matches the energy of the observer. Yet, for something so simple, it is astonishing how quickly people dismiss it. Why? Because simplicity often conceals depth. Because we are conditioned to believe that anything real must be hard, complicated, verified by institutions. But the truth is, you are already manifesting every moment of your life. Your beliefs, your assumptions, your identity, all of these are quietly determining what you allow into your experience and what you subconsciously push away. We don't manifest what we want. We manifest what we are. That is the uncomfortable secret. Your self-concept, the story you live inside, that quiet narrative beneath your waking thoughts, this is the true creative force. Unless you become conscious of it, unless you begin to deliberately shape that narrative, no visualization or affirmation will ever break through the noise of your unconscious resistance. This is why quantum manifestation, though conceptually simple, requires a kind of inner discipline. Not a discipline of effort, but of awareness. To observe your thoughts as they arise, not merely react to them, to become intimate with the architecture of your own psyche, to understand the energies you are projecting into the field, not with judgment, but with curiosity. It is the work of reclaiming authorship over your life's script. You do not have to force reality to bend to your will. Reality, like a fluid, shapes itself around the container of your consciousness. Change the container, and the world within it transforms accordingly. So the question is not whether manifestation works. The question is, are you willing to become aware of what you're already manifesting unconsciously? Are you willing to take responsibility for the observer within? Because in the end, reality responds not to what you say you believe, but to what you actually believe. Beneath the surface, where the quiet voice of the self whispers the blueprint of your world. And that blueprint is yours to rewrite. Let me know if you'd like the next segment drafted, or if you'd like this adapted for presentation slides or print. If we accept that reality to some extent mirrors our internal state, if we acknowledge the possibility that thought and observation carry influence over the unfolding of experience, then the next logical question must be, why do so few people genuinely engage with this? Why is it that, despite the growing accessibility of these ideas, quantum manifestation remains misunderstood, misapplied, or altogether dismissed? The answer lies in the uneasy relationship between modern consciousness and the unknown. We live in an age that prizes certainty. Measurement, logic, and proof are the holy trinity of contemporary intellect. And yet, ironically, quantum physics, the very frontier of material science, has dismantled the illusion of a predictable, fixed universe. It has shown us that matter is not solid, that particles behave differently when observed, and that potential outcomes exist simultaneously until one is chosen. This is not mystical conjecture, it is empirical reality. But the implications are so deeply unsettling to our rational structures that we retreat. We dismiss what we do not yet know how to control. This cognitive dissonance creates a strange phenomenon. The most revolutionary insights of modern science are absorbed selectively. We take the technology they enable, quantum computing, lasers, MRI, but discard the metaphysical implications. We do not question what it truly means that the observer plays a role in shaping the observed. We fear that if we pull on that thread, everything we believe about objectivity, about control, will unravel. Psychologically, this mirrors what Jung observed in the individual. The ego resists the unconscious. It resists ambiguity, complexity, paradox. The ego wants to know, to define, to categorize. And manifestation, true quantum-level manifestation, requires the opposite posture. It demands surrender to uncertainty, trust in the unseen, and a willingness to believe before evidence appears. That is not how we have been trained to think. It is not how we were educated, nor how we were raised. So most people do not fail at manifestation because they lack the tools. They fail because they do not believe the tools are real. Or worse, they try them superficially, repeating affirmations without changing their underlying beliefs, and then conclude that the method is flawed rather than their own approach. This is like planting seeds in concrete and blaming the seed when nothing grows. To approach manifestation with any seriousness requires a radical shift, not just in behavior, but in worldview. It requires that we unlearn the rigid division between inner and outer, subjective and objective. It asks us to step out of the narrow frame of cause and effect and into a deeper symbolic view of life, where meaning and experience are entangled, where thoughts are not just fleeting, private occurrences, but formative acts of creation. The tragedy is that this knowledge, this power has always been available to us, but it has been buried beneath layers of intellectual pride and cultural conditioning. We have mistaken complexity for truth and dismissed the simple because it seems too close at hand. We are, in many ways, like fish searching for water, blind to the medium we move through. And so the challenge is not to invent a new system or discover a new method. It is to remember what we already know in the deeper layers of our psyche, that the world responds not just to what we do, but to who we are being. That consciousness is not separate from reality, but a participatory force in it. Which brings us to a sobering thought. Maybe it's not that manifestation doesn't work. Maybe it's that we are too afraid of the responsibility that comes with knowing it does. Let that sit with you, because to believe it, truly believe it, means that your life, in all its complexity, is not happening to you. It's responding to you. Let's continue the speech with an expansion of key point 3, following naturally from the previous sections. This segment will stay true to the tone, philosophical, psychologically grounded, and intellectually clear, reflecting a Jungian approach to understanding human resistance and unconscious limitations. Even once people are exposed to the concept that thought shapes reality, that intention has power, that we are not merely passive recipients of experience but active participants in its unfolding, most still find themselves unable to access the potential of manifestation in any meaningful way. And this brings us to something far deeper, far more hidden than mere skepticism: the architecture of the psyche itself. There is a force, invisible but profoundly influential, that determines what we believe we are allowed to receive. It is not logic. It is not evidence. It is conditioning. From the earliest moments of life, we absorb messages about who we are, what we deserve, and how the world works. These messages, often inherited unconsciously from family, culture, religion, education, become internalized structures, shaping the range of what we believe is possible for us. Jung referred to this as the complex, a cluster of unconscious patterns built from experience, often emotional in nature, that governs our perception and behavior. A person may consciously desire abundance, for instance, but if their unconscious complex associates money with danger, unworthiness, or betrayal, then no matter how many vision boards they create, they will unconsciously sabotage their own success. Not because they are broken, but because they are loyal to a psychological imprint more powerful than surface willpower. This is why so many people who engage with manifestation techniques find themselves frustrated. It is not that their intention lacks sincerity. It is that another deeper intention, one they are unaware of, is operating underneath, cancelling out the conscious effort, In other words, they are trying to create a new reality using the same identity that created the old one. To manifest effectively, then, is not simply to change what you think. It is to change the thinker. The self must evolve, not by force, but by awareness. You must become willing to meet the parts of yourself that are afraid, wounded, doubtful, not to fix them, but to listen to them, because those parts are the very source of the limitation. This is not merely spiritual work, it is profoundly psychological, and this is where most manifestation rhetoric goes wrong. It skips over the shadow, it avoids the uncomfortable. It tells people to just be positive when what is actually required is a descent into the very structures of belief that are running the show behind the scenes. Jung understood this well. He taught that transformation does not occur through denial of the unconscious, but through integration of it. And that integration begins with a very simple yet radical act: self-honesty. To look within without judgment and ask, what am I afraid would happen if I actually got what I wanted? Who would I no longer be? What responsibilities would I then have? What identities would I lose? These questions reveal the hidden agreements we've made with limitation, because in truth, much of what we call failure to manifest is not failure at all. It is unconscious resistance. It is the psyche protecting itself from what it believes will cause pain, overwhelm, or abandonment, even if that protection keeps us trapped. So if we are to speak of quantum manifestation seriously, we must also speak of healing, not in the sentimental sense, but in the sense of restoring integrity between the conscious mind and the unconscious self. We must come to know the stories we are living beneath our awareness, for it is those stories, not our goals or affirmations, that are shaping the field of possibility. Until we do, we will continue to manifest realities that match not our desires, but our unresolved fears. And so I leave you with this. Don't ask why your manifestations haven't come true. Ask what part of you would feel unsafe if they did. Let's now develop key point 4 into the next natural movement of the speech, staying true to the tone, psychologically deep, intellectually grounded, and philosophically reflective in a Jungian manner. This segment addresses why people abandon manifestation too early, frustrated by the lack of immediate results, and how that impulse reveals something profound about modern consciousness. It's not difficult to see why people give up on manifestation. In an era driven by instant gratification, we've been conditioned to expect visible results from invisible efforts, quickly, neatly, and preferably without discomfort. We are trained almost from birth to value speed over depth, productivity over process, and outcomes over meaning. So when people engage with the idea of quantum manifestation, they often carry this same mindset. They treat it like a transaction. I visualize, I affirm, I wait, and if nothing happens within a few days or weeks, I conclude it doesn't work. But this is not the nature of inner transformation. Nor is it how reality, at the quantum or psychological level, responds. Manifestation is not about commanding the universe like a vending machine. It's about becoming the kind of person who naturally inhabits the reality you desire. And becoming takes time. It unfolds in layers, many of which are invisible, subtle, and deeply uncomfortable. This impatience, this urge for proof, is actually a defense mechanism. It shields us from the vulnerability required to truly commit to an unseen process. Because to commit to something without immediate evidence requires faith, not in the religious sense, but in the psychological sense. The ability to hold a reality internally before it has materialized externally. And that is no small task. It requires emotional maturity, patience, and a willingness to delay gratification in the service of something deeper. Jung spoke often of the value of process over outcome. The alchemical journey of transformation for him was not about achieving some final perfect state. It was about the gradual integration of opposites within the self, the willingness to remain in the tension of not knowing, of not yet having, and yet trusting that something meaningful is unfolding. But most people are uncomfortable with that tension. When results don't appear quickly, they assume failure, when in fact what is often occurring is energetic reorganization. Old patterns are being dismantled. Internal conflicts are surfacing. New opportunities are aligning behind the scenes. But because none of this is visible, it is mistaken for stagnation, and so they give up, just before the shift begins. This is where discipline comes in. Not the rigid willpower-based discipline we associate with forcing results, but a deeper kind of loyalty to the self. A willingness to stay present with your vision even when there is no external reward for doing so. To hold a frequency, an identity, a belief, not because it's working yet, but because it's who you are choosing to become. And it's precisely in this liminal space, the space between intention and manifestation, that most people abandon the process. They lose the thread, not because manifestation isn't happening, but because it's not happening on their timeline or in the way they expected. They mistake the gestation period for failure. But growth does not always look like growth. Sometimes it looks like stillness, like confusion, even like regression. But these are often signs that the deeper work is underway. In many ways, this impatience reveals the unconscious belief that we are separate from the process itself. That we are here and manifestation is something out there. But the truth is, the process is not separate from you. You are the process. You are the field through which the shift occurs. Your thoughts, your emotions, your energy, they are not inputs into a machine. They are the environment in which reality is being gestated. And so the work becomes not to chase the outcome, but to become the kind of vessel that can sustain the reality you wish to create. That requires stillness. That requires staying. That requires trusting the invisible. And here is the paradox. What you desire is already on its way the moment you align with it. The question is, can you remain the person who called it in? Let's now complete the speech with the expansion of key point 5, following seamlessly from the prior reflection on patience, inner change, and psychological alignment. This final segment brings the speech full circle, crystallizing the deeper truth of manifestation, not as mere wishing, but as a shift in self and identity. As always, the tone remains intellectually grounded, psychologically rich, and reflective of Jungian insight. By now it should be clear. Manifestation is not about willing things into existence through sheer desire or mental repetition. It is not a matter of asking the universe and waiting passively for delivery. That's a misunderstanding, one that keeps many people trapped in cycles of frustration. The truth is both simpler and more demanding. Manifestation is not something you do, it is something you become. You don't manifest from what you want, you manifest from who you are being. This distinction is not just linguistic, it's psychological. Wishing for a new life while continuing to embody the mindset, the emotions, and the habits of the old one creates internal dissonance. On the surface, there is hope, but underneath there is tension, a gap between the conscious goal and the unconscious self. That gap is what many call a resistance. But it's not resistance in the sense of opposition. It's a misalignment of identity. This is why simply visualizing your desired outcome is not enough. If you still identify as someone who is lacking, waiting, or separate from that reality, then that state becomes the true vibration you are emitting. And the quantum field, the field of pure potential, is not responding to your affirmations. It's responding to your state of being. It reflects not what you claim, but what you believe yourself to be. Jung understood this when he wrote about individuation, the process of becoming whole. True transformation for him was not about becoming something better, but about integrating all aspects of the self into a unified and authentic center. In this sense, manifestation is not an act of creation from nothing. It is the revealing of what is already latent within you, obscured by false identities, inherited beliefs, and unexamined fears. So the real work is inner. It is about shaping the self until it becomes structurally compatible with the reality you wish to live. That may sound abstract, but in practice it's profoundly concrete. It means speaking as that version of yourself, thinking as them, moving through the world with the posture and presence of the person who already has what you seek. Not as an act of fantasy, but as a process of repatterning the nervous system, the psyche, and the emotional body. And this is where most people hesitate, because this kind of becoming is not comfortable. It often requires shedding relationships, habits, and even self-images that have provided a sense of stability. There is grief in that. There is disorientation. And yet, without that shift in identity, no true manifestation can take root. You may attract fleeting experiences, but they will not stay, because your inner reality does not yet have the structure to hold them. The paradox, then, is this: manifestation is not about reaching forward to grasp a new future. It's about collapsing the illusion of separation between who you are and who you are becoming. It's about dissolving the psychological boundary between the observer and the observed, recognizing that they are not two, but one. This is not metaphor. It is metaphysics. You are not a subject acting upon an object called a reality. You are reality, localized in a form that can think, feel, and choose. You are the node through which infinite potential becomes form. So the invitation, if there is one, is not to manifest a better life. It is to become a clearer channel for the life that is already seeking expression through you. A life that matches the truth of your being, not the noise of your desires. And perhaps the most radical thing you can do is not to seek more, but to become more. Because the life you long for isn't waiting out there. It's waiting for you to remember who you already are.